Hello and welcome to the Monaghan's Post-Budget Podcast. I'm Dominic Borquin, I'm the Head of Tax at Monaghan's, and I'm joined by Stephanie Hurst, who's a Corporate Tax Director at Monaghan's as well. So, Steph, winners and losers, what do you reckon?
Winners and losers. I'd say definite winners from this budget will be pensioners. Pensioners, they had a 4.8% increase in their state pension. They're not affected by the new ISA rules. Of course, they restrict the amount you can put into an ISA, but they've confirmed that people over 65 aren't affected by that. Brilliant. Um, in the very small details, they're getting rid of bingo duty.
I know.
Which is brilliant.
Well,
10% off, 10% duty flat.
it's not brilliant if you work in Monaghan's bingo department because they're all going to be made redundant.
Yeah, absolutely. And I do think there's probably some form of bingo rhyming slang there, isn't there? 10%, heaven sent.
Oh God, I've no idea what that number is. I've not got the wings yet to go to bingo, but there's still time.
The other winners, I think, were low income earners. To be perfectly honest, with the raise in national minimum wage, national living wage, I think anyone on a low income, also actually with children, are probably winning from this budget.
Yeah, I'd agree. Absolutely. Yes.
And unfortunately, I think that's probably where the winning list ends. I think the losers list is much larger.
Yes, I'm not sure if you've even got time to go through all of the losers, but but there we are. To me, I think business rates. I know you're going to cover it shortly, but business rates is a loser for most businesses, unless you're Harrods. I think fuel duty will affect us all, not only because we have to put fuel in the car to go to work, but also it goes into food prices, etc. Threshold freezes will affect all of us as well. There's an awful lot of measures in here that are bad, as in people will lose out.
Yeah, absolutely. And there were so many measures as well. I think I heard there were 77 overall.
Yes. Yeah.
Some of which are very tiny, but all of which have some form of impact on our earners and our investors.
So much for simplifying the UK tax code.
Yeah, absolutely.
More complexity every year that goes by, but there we are. It's almost like they're designing it so people get it wrong.
Do you think so? Yeah.
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 Indeed.
So I think one thing that struck me from the budget was how much Labour seemed to hate pubs.
Well,
pubs, retail and hospitality.
Yes, I do remember. Unfortunately, Keir Starmer has a very apt rhyming name, doesn't he? And there was a sort of sniff of scandal about him drinking beer during COVID, and it was like, more beer Keir, but clearly no more beer now because yeah.
And it certainly won't be. I don't know if you saw the headlines this morning, but a number of pubs have specifically banned Labour MPs.
I hadn't seen that
as a result of the budget. Yeah, I think it's over 50 now, according to the headlines.
Good.
Yeah, well, across the country.
Yeah.
So I think the first thing that really hits retail, hospitality, and our public houses is business rates.
Yeah.
So the budget documents say that there will be a business rates reform, so a revaluation and a change in multiplier from April 26, and it will benefit 750,000 retail, hospitality, and leisure businesses. Now, if you have a look at the headline rates, so the small business multipliers are going to go down. These multipliers effectively work out what business rates you're going to pay. So if the multiplier goes down, your business rate is going to go down. Brilliant. The problem is at the same time as those multipliers going down is that the properties and rental years will be revalued. So the last time they were revalued was in April 23, I think it was. And at that time, you look retrospectively at valuations. And so they valued properties at April 21. Now, where were we in April 21?
Just out of COVID.
Exactly. So, retail, hospitality, leisure businesses will all be hit, and all the rental values, all the property values would have gone down at that point. So although there would have been an increase in April 23 in business rates because of the valuation would have gone up, it probably didn't go up as much as it should have done because of the pandemic. Now, in April 26, everything will be revalued, but we will be looking at April 24 rates. So, we're not in a pandemic then, we're very far out of the pandemic. So general view is that a lot of retail businesses on the high street are going to be hit with a significant increase in their business rates, even though the multipliers have gone down, and that all sounds very nice. The reality of it is the revaluation is probably going to hit a number of those businesses, and it won't
Yes.
it won't be as glorious as it's been made out to be.
No.
I think I did see that there is something on the government website where you can go and check your business rates now. So I'd recommend anyone with a kind of a small business to go and do that, just to make sure you're aware of what's going to happen when that time comes. Interestingly, I think it's the Pubs Advisory Service that has a section on their website about how you can appeal against the valuation of your business rates. Well, why would you need a section about that if it was going to be right in the first place? It does make you wonder.
I can see a cottage industry growing up a bit like the personal finance charge claims that have been made over the years in actually appealing business rates, and rightly so. If they're wrong, they're wrong, and if you get a reduction, it'll benefit the small business concerned, and why not? Frankly, why not?
Yeah, absolutely. And I think the UK Hospitality have said they expect overall that business rates will go up around 13%.
Oh wow, that's quite an increase,
which is quite significant. So
well, together with the employer NI increases last year, the cost of doing business is going up yet again.
Yeah, absolutely. And we also have to think about the fact that the national living wage and the national minimum wage are going to go up again in April 26.
Yeah.
I think the national living wage, particularly for people aged between 18 and 20, is going up something like 8.5%.
Yeah.
There was an article, a really interesting article actually on the BBC recently about the increase in minimum wage and what that means for hospitality industries. And they say that people aged between 16 and 24 make up quite a huge proportion of people working in those industries, and those are the people that are getting the direct increase in minimum wage and living wage. So again, we're looking at people who work in pubs, in hotels, in bars, in retail work. All of their costs are all of a sudden going to go up because their wages bills are going to go up as well.
Yep. And the business rates bills are going up.
Exactly. So you've got your business rates, you've got your living wage, your minimum wage going up for basically all of the people you employ. And on top of that, the alcohol duty is going to go up as well. So the fund tax is going up.
Yeah. It does feel like you started by saying I don't think this government likes pubs, and I think you're probably right.
They don't like pubs, and I don't think they like farmers either, do they?
No,
particularly.
No, I think you're right.
Because in the same breath as raising business rates, they're also putting a high value, what's known as a mansion tax onto high value properties. Anything worth over £2 million will all of a sudden pay an extra at least £2,500 in council tax. Now, the farmers were hit, and a lot of wealthier people were hit last year with the changes to inheritance tax. Now, a lot of farm owners have huge farmhouses. They're in rolling hills and they're beautifully placed, but they're all asset rich, cash poor. So they'll be sitting on,
and they serve a function at the heart of the farm, the farm
absolutely.
even.
Yeah, absolutely. So they'll be sitting on that farmhouse, which could be worth in excess of 2 million, and all of a sudden they're finding themselves with an extra cash flow problem because they've got more council tax to pay.
Yes, I agree, and that's the problem, isn't it? Is that these measures, each measure on its own doesn't sound too dreadful, but you put them all together, and I mentioned fuel duty a few minutes ago. So the fuel duty, the 5p postponed fuel duty increase that was postponed in COVID, is coming in stages from September next year. It's like 1p, and then a couple of months later 2p, and then so 5p in all, and then fuel duty will be indexed to RPI, I think, or CPI. It doesn't really matter. The point is that, to me, is that they add the fuel duty on, and of course the VAT is then charged on the fuel duty and the price of the fuel. So there's a double whammy there for both taxpayers and the government in terms of the tax they'll collect. And as I say, most of the goods in this country are transported by road, so that will definitely feed into inflation. It will feed into prices, and so we'll see higher inflation because of the fuel duty rises at a time when household budgets are already being squeezed and business budgets are already being squeezed. And think what you might, but actually businesses are going to pass on those increased costs to consumers.
Mm-hmm.
And consumers, well, dare we move on to the threshold freezes? So we're now in an extended period of freezing of the basic rate band, the freezing of the personal allowance, and the freezing of the higher rate band. So that means that from 2028 to 2031, those bands will remain the same. So the numbers are pretty draconian in terms of what that will do. That means by 2031, another 700,000 people who will all have had pay rises, hopefully, will actually be paying tax. They never paid tax before. And another 920,000 people will be paying 40% tax that were never paying 40% tax before. When I first started in work, and it was a long time ago, paying a 40p rate of tax was a bit of an aspiration. You're thinking, well, I've made it now.
I've made it.
I'm paying 40p tax.
Yeah.
Unfortunately, by the end of this parliament, 2031 at least, there'll be 10 million people paying the high rate of tax for 40p. I mean, that's just it just strikes me as wrong. But what it will mean is it means those people will all be hitting their pockets. So any pay rises they do get, quite a chunk of it will disappear to the government in increased revenue. And then let's move on, shall we, to the 2% increase in income tax for dividend income, rental income, and what they call investment income, so interest basically to the rest of us. So from April 2026, dividend rates of income tax will be increased by 2%. So 8.75 will become 10.75, 30, whatever it is, 33.75 will become 35.75, and the highest rate of 39.35 will stay the same.
Doesn't make any sense, does it?
No, it doesn't. No. Well, or does it? Hang on. So rental income is a 2% increase. 20 becomes 22, 40 becomes 42, 45 becomes 47. That's from April 2027. And the same thing happens to interest. I think they've been a bit clever, or they're trying to be a bit clever, because last budget, they increased the rate of capital gains tax. And the OBR said, well, nice try, but actually you're going to lose £30 billion worth of capital gains tax revenue because people will change their behaviour. To realise a capital gain and pay tax, you need to sell something, pretty much, or you need to give it away to the wrong person, or give away the wrong sort of asset. So there's a choice there. You might choose to keep the asset, not dispose of it. You might choose to mortgage the asset and use that money to then make the investment you want to make. And the same is true with inheritance tax. To an extent, inheritance tax is voluntary. Yes, it involves a significant amount of planning, and yes, everyone's worried about giving everything away and running out of money, but ultimately you can do something to plan around it. These 2% changes to income tax for rental income, let's talk about rental income. If you want to not have rental income, you're going to have to sell your property, and what you're going to do, pay capital gains tax is what you're going to do. So actually that involves quite a lot of heavy lifting. You might have to evict tenants, sell properties, pay capital gains tax. So actually it's much less voluntary to pay those tax increases, I think. I mean, dividends, if you run an owner managed business, you may choose to extract profits with a small salary and take larger dividends, so therefore you could perhaps change your salary mix, but to me those tax rates are less avoidable than capital gains tax increases and IHT changes.
Yeah, I agree with you. I think thinking about the dividend increase in particular, a lot of clients that we deal with, a lot of people in a lot of small businesses in this country will be owner managed businesses, and they will generally take their income from their company as salary and dividends. Now, historically, for a very long time, as long as I can remember, it's always been the case that you have small salary to make sure you get a state pension credit, and the rest of your income comes out as dividends. I think the question that's raised whenever dividend rates are tinkered with is this still the right thing to do?
Yeah.
And I do think largely it is still the right thing to do. I think generally taking a small salary and larger dividends is probably just about going to be the right thing to do. But I would probably say that people with small businesses, limited companies, who have that remuneration structure should actually just take stock of their position and just step
Yeah.
back and go, is this still correct? Is
Mm.
this still the most efficient thing for me? Particularly with, those individuals might have property income, they might have savings income,
Absolutely.
and all of a sudden, their income requirements have changed, or their tax charges have changed. So it's always a good idea when anything like this happens, any kind of tax charge, to go, right, okay, where am I? What does this mean for me? And particularly with kind of remuneration planning, is this still the right thing for me? Is this still the most efficient thing to do?
Yeah, that mix of income, and I think the thing is, the mix of income is very important, and I don't think there's one size fits all, because if you've got rental income and interest income now at 22 and 42, or rather than at 20 and 40, and you've got a salary and you've got dividends, who knows how that all fits together. Oh, another little change, of course, is the personal allowance. So when I was in short trousers and a small boy, which was before the budget in November, you were allowed to choose which income you offset your personal allowance against first. You're now not allowed to, because of course, if you're choosing which income to set your personal allowance against, guess what? It's going to be the one at 20. It's the one at 22 and 42 and 47, isn't it? Yes. So rental income, interest income.
Sneaky.
Yeah, it is sneaky. But that's clearly been thought through as an anti-avoidance measure. So here we. I also think there's. It's amazing how what seems like a small change can raise so much money. So we've also got businesses from the 6th of April 2026. So that's partnerships and sole traders, and companies from the 1st of April 2026 will now only qualify for a 14% annual allowance in respect of their capital expenditure rather than 18%. Now, a lot of these businesses will probably not spend enough money for that to be important, because along with that 18 to 14 reduction is a new allowance, a 40% first year allowance that is being brought in. So from April next year, we're going to have an annual investment allowance that applies to plant and machinery broadly. We've got full expensing allowance that applies to new plant and machinery. And then we've got this new 40% first year allowance, which now applies to companies that lease assets, which was never the case before. You couldn't use any of those other allowances for that. And we've got a reduction from 18% to 14% for annual writing down allowances for capital expenditure. Interestingly, the change to bring in a 40% first year allowance and to reduce the writing down allowances from 18 to 14 is going to raise £1.5 billion.
Wow.
So doesn't sound like much, and it sounds like a giveaway because there's a brand new 40% allowance. Actually, it's a tax raising measure. So yet again, businesses, particularly those that are capital intensive, and we do, believe it or not, we do still have large manufacturing businesses in this country that do spend millions of pounds on assets. And you may have I went to see a business in Cotswolds Way recently. They're building a new building. They are going to spend a lot of money kitting that building. It's a production facility out, so therefore they will be all over those allowances. But of course, once they've exceeded their annual investments allowance and perhaps full expensive doesn't apply, they'll be into 18. They'll be in where they were in at 18. Now they're going to be in at 14, and that's going to only be bad news for them, really.
Yeah, it's interesting, isn't it? I mean, I've said it before, and I'll say it again. How do you expect the UK to grow if you don't provide the incentives to build or invest into plant and machinery?
Absolutely.
Or provide growth in that way. And I think I said it on the last podcast we did. I still would have liked to have seen more green incentives. More incentives for putting solar panels on top of your building, or more incentives for. I do appreciate that there is 100% allowance for installing an electric vehicle charger. And buying an electric vehicle, as long as it's brand new and unused and hasn't been anywhere ever. That's been extended for another year, which is great. Why not make it permanent? If you want people to invest and you want people to be greener, in accordance with manifesto and pledges, then why not introduce those kinds of reliefs?
But this is, I think, is the problem. Is there's an awful lot of talk, an awful lot of hot air from the Chancellor and others in the government about growth, and yet right here, right now, I can't think of a single measure of the 77 that were announced that will actually, to any meaningful extent, promote growth.
Yep.
And I think that's a real problem when we have an economy that is already struggling. If you tax more highly the proceeds of taking risk for an entrepreneur, or earning more money and developing yourself and moving through the ranks at work, so you have a larger salary, you tax that more highly, then that will there's less incentive for people to do it.
Yeah.
And
Absolutely.
so I think the thrust of this budget was in my mind is not right at all.
No. Okay, so I think we're both agreed that this budget wasn't exactly where we would have. I don't think it was as bad as it could have been, in all honesty. I don't think it's quite pitched where we would want it to have been. So my question to you would be, if you could have done one thing in the budget, if you were Chancellor, if you were Rachel Reeves, or Dominic Reeves in this case, if you were able to stand up and do one thing in the budget, what would you have done?
I'm going to have two things, actually. I was horrified when a Conservative government put the corporation tax rate up from 19 to 25%, and then proceeded to go to trade shows all over the world and say the UK is open for business. That's why we've just raised corporate taxes by 6%. 6%. It's like a third, really, on 19%. It's the third. And you think, how can you say Britain is open for business for corporates to invest in if you're taxing those profits 6% more highly than you were? So I'd like them to have cut the corporation tax rate. And I think there is absolutely no doubt in my mind that the increase in employers' national insurance has cost this country a number of working people, in terms of they are no longer working. And also you look at the vacancies and the drop off in the number of vacancies that are available in this country for people who want to work. And again, that's directly a result of the employers' national insurance increase. So I think that should have been cut back as well.
Yeah. I think, and this is going to be a very unpopular opinion, and it goes against every fibre of my being as someone who advises people how to pay the right amount of tax. I would have preferred Rachel, Ms. Reeves, to stand up and increase income tax by 2%. I think it would have plugged the biggest gap. In all honesty, it would not have been the popular opinion. It would have gone down like an absolute lead balloon, but it might have been the right thing to do.
Yes.
And I think I'm disappointed, again, as I usually am on budget day, that the right thing isn't always done.
No.
I think, you know, we seem to overcomplicate matters when we could, although not the politically, you know, popular choice for her to stand up and raise income taxes when Labour said they wouldn't in their manifesto. If it's the right thing to do that.
Absolutely.
You know, keep things simple, not give us an extra goodness knows how many pages to tax legislation, which is already 20,000 pages long.
Absolutely. I mean, you know, I don't want either of us to lose our jobs, but frankly, if income tax should be at 30%, and we can scrap all the other guff, and there's quite a lot with 20,000 pages of guff, then actually, maybe that's the way forward. But then you and I wouldn't have a job, so, you know.
No, I might run for Chancellor instead.
Well, you'd have a good chance of getting in right now, I think. But
yeah, anyway, I might, yeah.
There's I think about a vacancy coming to you near you soon, I think. Yeah. I do have one interesting fact. You talk about people being more highly taxed and how they change their behaviour. And Jeremy Hunt actually referenced it in his last budget, something called the Laffer curve. So Arthur Laffer is a US economist, and he said, if you put taxes up to 100%, no one will work because you're taking all their money. So you can't have taxes at 100%. If you have taxes at 0%, you won't be able to pay for any public services, fill the potholes, schools, doctors, etc. So you can't have it at 0%. So in the middle, there is a sweet spot. And frankly, the middle is not the middle of between 0 and 100%. The middle is towards the lower end, because generally the lower the tax rate is, the more tax you collect. So factoid of the day, back in the 1970s, corporation tax was at a rate of 50%. And the government, I know, massive, the government collected 2.3% of GDP in corporation tax. Scroll forward 50 odd years, and in 2019, the corporation tax rate was 19%, so less than half what it was in the 70s, and the government collected 2.5% of GDP in corporation tax. So they
Wow.
collected 0.2% more of GDP with a rate that was less than half the one in the 1970s.
Because it says, hey, we're
Yeah.
open for business.
Absolutely. And
Yeah.
what's more, people will try less hard to avoid it, dare I say evade it.
Yeah.
But that's not the world we're in at the moment, I don't think. It's just not.
No.
Oh, and here's the news. She's coming back next time for more, it seems.
Okay.
I think she's already said that. So stand by your beds. We're not done yet.
Yeah, absolutely. So I think just to wrap up, I think it's a good time just for people to review their own personal situation, whether that's personal tax, whether that's they have a limited company,
Absolutely.
whether they have a sole trader or a business. You know, it's a good time to actually step back. I know we're coming towards the festive period, but you know, it's a time to stand back, because some of these measures don't come in for another couple of years either, as well.
Yes.
You know, we've got a bit of time before these things actually happen. You know, stand back and just look at everything and make sure that, you know, going forward, that your position is in the best way that it can be, really.
Absolutely. No, I'd agree. I mean, we've only covered a handful of the 77 measures, and there are a number of others that will be important to certain people. But again, a lot of them aren't coming in now. So as you say, now is the time to step back and look at your position, your business's position holistically, and decide, actually, how can I plan to not be the subject of all these tax rises?
Absolutely.
Great. Thank you very much. See you in the spring, no doubt.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, you certainly will.
Indeed.